In a world like none other, there comes one man in search of plastic, in search of cons. He is known as Plasticon. Join him as he brings toys from another dimension to a household near you.
Welcome back to another Plasticon review. Today I'm going to be reviewing something a lot different than I normally do. That is the Unofficial Guide to Vintage Transformers, 1980s through the 1990s. This is brought to you by J.E. Alvarez, also known as Rick Alvarez, is the author. The Sheffer Publishing has kindly sent me a copy of this book. This book is different from the one that was previously released back in 2001. The one back then was released and it was called The Unofficial Guide to Transformers, 1980s through the 1990s. The difference between these two books is, first off, the cover art. The second off thing is the word vintage. So if you're going to be in the market trying to find the first print edition of this book, that is what you're going to be looking for. Getting into this book, though, this book has got a lot of really interesting things. I actually own the other book, and it primarily takes a compilation of a couple of his books and combines them more or less into one. This book's actually got a very cool thing here about the author itself. Not to mention very good artwork throughout the entire book. The photography is done very well. It's actually got a nice little dedication page here, not to mention the table of contents. The table of contents is something that is pretty important for this, considering anybody is a purchaser of vintage Transformers between 1984 all the way into the Machine Wars age. This is going to be perfect for you guys that are out there. Getting more into this, there is sponsorship. Because sponsorship, yo. You have Capture Prey, Transformers for Your Listening Pleasure, also known as TFYLP, the official podcast. You also have Yellow Wolf Studios that did quite a bit of the photography within this, not to mention Big Bad Toy Store, because a lot of you guys shop at Big Bad. Getting more into this thing, though, we actually have a quite large assortment of things going on here. Every chapter within this book has got a nice breakdown talking about what was released that year, what was available that year, and how things came about. This does touch base with a bit of Diaclone, but not a lot, considering this is more Transformers focused. One great thing about this thing for you guys out there that are into finding out if you have everything for that line, it actually has a nice checklist. These checklists are very important and very good for anybody out there wanting to purchase one of these books to be able to take it to a convention or possibly a comic book store. The artwork, just the way the entire thing is laid out, is just very well done. One thing that it has is little bitty descriptions next to quite a bit of the photos to actually help you out through checking out to see what variants, such as the plastic versus the metal feet on some of your cassette robots, and just small little things that most people primarily would be looking for such a guide to be able to tell them a little bit about differences. Now, one thing this thing is not, it is not a parts log. It's not going to have every single solitary breakdown of all your parts. I know a lot of people out there kind of more or less might be looking for something like that. If that's what you're looking for, this book is not going to provide that, but it will provide you a lot of enjoyment, considering it does have a lot of good high quality photos throughout the entire thing to really help you try to spot those differences, especially when you go and find, say, a G1 Optimus Prime at a yard sale, or you're trying to figure out whether it's a G1 or a G2, or what the spot difference is between certain robots when you go out and purchase them, such as the Astro Train variants that are out there and such. This thing actually has a lot of really good stuff throughout it that will really help you out, especially when it comes to trying to spot a certain difference. One thing it does not necessarily have is a lot of the pricing, considering the collection market is more or less in the eye of the buyer. If the person's going to purchase it, he's going to pay a certain amount of money for it. This really isn't, it's got a bit of a guide kind of to tell you what things primarily are worth, but a lot of the pricing here was actually data mined through Rick and several other people to be able to figure out what certain things would be possibly worth at this current time. But one good thing I do like about this thing is like some of the things it has in here, such as the McDonald's toys that they released back then. I myself, I barely even remember these, and I was floored when I saw how many different variants there are of these things. I mean, you have Cliff Jumper, Bumblebee, Gears, and Brawn in so many different color variants. This is just nuts, and it's just crazy to see that, and it even has a bagged sample here. A lot of these photos are provided by several folks that actually really did give us a lot of information. Now, let's get into something really weird, because we're flipping through this and found out there was a Cracker Jack cereal. This Cracker Jack cereal I vaguely remember. Not to mention that it was a mail away Jazz was involved with this. When you go further into the book, you'll actually find out there was a Transformer cereal that was going to be released but never actually made it to store shelves. It only went to sales people. That was also going to provide the mail-away Jazz, but the more apparent one that most people are more familiar with is the Cookie Crisp Jazz that actually was released with this cereal promotion. I find this great that this is even acknowledged in this book. There's a lot of things a lot of people don't tend to see, and that is one of them. Not to mention Pepsi Prime, because, you know, Pepsi Prime was all over the place. They had, you know, different variants of him. But one thing I absolutely love about this book is the fact that the artwork that has been done to display these toys is very, it's done very well. Not to mention these checklists and these breakdowns. Like I said, it goes through almost everything that you could possibly look for. I know that some people out there are probably going to be wanting more, like I said, the parts breakdown, but you know, most of these are complete toys that are took photos of, but not every single solitary one of them are. As you get further into this book, though, you're going to find out that, you know, there's even acknowledgement here of, you know, you got Trypticon, but Trypticon Jr., you know, the smaller variant one, which a lot of people rarely have even seen these things in the wild, let alone good high quality photos of them, which are displayed in here very nicely. There are variants in here that I'm not, well, things I have seen, things I've actually owned, and there's been times it's in here, it's like, what is that? Where did this come from? Well, some things in here, such as the Japanese stuff, you don't hardly ever see very many photos, let alone reviews of these guys, such as Ranger. He is a really hard one to find, considering he was basically a repaint of Joyride, which I love the idea that this book really does focus more like on, okay, you got repaints and such that came out. I love the fact that this book has all this in here. This is a great coffee table book, which is exactly what Rick intended it to be. And it's got some very, very good stuff throughout the entire thing. I really do find a lot of the stuff throughout this book very enjoyable to look at. I mean, these are very good pictures. There's nothing really out of focus. You don't really have to deal with the fact of questioning whether it's a complete toy or not. Some people that are out there actually know that they're complete. I find it crazy that they actually have a black Zerac that's actually displayed here, considering the gold plastic syndrome this thing has. Just really, really good high quality photos. And I love this book. This book is very well done. The quality of the book itself, when it comes to the pages and such, is very, very well done. And it's just, everything's in here. Even goes into your action masters. Obviously, your generation, well, what most people out there want to call 1.5. 7.2 and 11 don't really have a actual breakdown for like what was released. It doesn't have all that in there. That's the only thing I can see that's really missing. But those two chapters, 7.2 and 11, they're not as detailed, but there is still some really, really good photo quality and all the little bitty breakdowns. Like, we were going to sit here and talk about like Star Convoy. You've got very good pictures of him in base mode, his vehicle mode, and not to mention his robot mode. And just, little bitty descriptions here. And Orson from Capture Prey actually provided this toy here to actually be, photographed. A lot of the stuff was photographed by Yellow Wolf Studios, which I'm glad that he actually had an opportunity to do this. And like I said, some of them, they don't really have a real good breakdown. Now, you guys out there know that I'm a big geek on G2. I love Generation 2. I'm not really going to focus on that all right now at the moment, but there's a great list here to be able to really help you guys out there that are trying to collect these toys. Because considering there is so many different variants, Dinobot-wise and such, there's so many toys in this thing, and it's just very, very well laid out. The whole thing is. I actually like the fact that, they even risked even transforming G2 Electro here, because, G2 Electro gold plastic syndrome just as bad as black Zerac. Actually worse, but the fact is these things are just in here. I love this book. This book is amazing. It really does just for a lot of things out there that most people have never seen, and it's honestly, to me, it's better than the first edition. I like the first edition, but I actually like this one much better. And one thing I do like is the fact that there are prototype ones that were put in here that were never released, like the G2 GoBots, also known as Spy Changers. And then you actually have the con exclusive from 1995 that was actually put in here. Good high quality photos of stuff that people normally don't get to see. This book is excellent for these kind of things. And it also goes into your Beast Wars, which I'm not big on Beast Wars, but not saying that I hate on Beast Wars. I'm not one of those kind of people. I'm just not big on the toys, but I think it's really awesome that Beast Wars is included in this book. This book actually has so much in it. This thing will make your eyes giggle. Now, you guys know how I feel about Machine Wars. You guys seen all my reviews of Machine Wars. I love Machine Wars, and I love the fact that Machine Wars was put in this book, because I think it is one of the most underrated lines of Transformers. Most people don't want to even acknowledge it even existed. To me, Machine Wars should have had something to do with G2, somewhere in there, because just the flip changing and the crazy gimmicks. I just love these toys. These toys are awesome. And it's just something I just really get into. Now the merchandising part, this is where it gets crazy. Because to me the merchandising is some of the best stuff done for Transformers. I love the fact that there's some really good high quality photos of everything in here. Not to mention this very extremely rare Rick Alvarez down here. You can find him anywhere between $15 to $25 on the secondary market. That's a rarity, guys. That's a rarity. Very hard to find that. If you guys find one out there on eBay or something like that, let me know, because I've been kind of trying to search one of those. But yeah, I went through this book, and I love this book. It's an awesome guide down memory lane. It really is. And there's one thing here I really wanted to point out, that because I was digging through this book last night and I saw this kite. I had that kite when I was a kid. I forgot I even had that kite when I was a kid, and I saw that and I geeked out about that. I was like, that is the craziest thing in the world, because it brought back so many memories just thinking about this silly kite. I mean, you guys talk about like having a G1 Optimus, stuff like that. I had one of these. And it's weird to see that was in the book. I was like, wow. But it's like I said, if you guys are in the market for a very, very, very good book on Transformers, this is actually one of the most excellent books I've seen that's been produced in a long time, dealing with your entire line going from the 80s throughout the 90s. If you guys want to purchase one of these books, you guys can click on the Amazon link down below. I will have it down there, so that way you guys can actually purchase it. And big shout out to everybody out there that has worked on this book and produced this book. I really enjoy it. And I hope you guys find enjoyment out of this video, and you guys go out there and grab one, because these things are awesome. Anyhow, this has been Plasticon. This has been yet another awesome review of some cool knowledge in a book versus a toy. And I'll see you guys around. That's it for now. Bye.